I'm Jay Taylor. I'm the editor of a newsletter called Jay Taylor's Gold Energy and Tech Stocks, and I'm here backstage at the June 18th Metals Investor Forum. And I'm here with Michael Hudson. He is the chairman and CEO of Hannan Metals. Hannan trades in Canada under the symbol HAN. You can buy it down here in the States, as I have, under the symbol HANNF. Last I checked, it had a market cap only around 23 million in Canadian money. Which I think is really something to make note of because I believe this company has a very substantial story. I'm really, really pleased to have Michael with me today. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
Always a pleasure, Jay. Thank you for having me.
Well, and it's just wonderful. You've got up really early on a Saturday morning. We're talking to you backstage, but it's virtual backstage. You're in Australia right now. I'm in New York City, doing this recording. But I mean, this is a story I learned about from Bob Moriarty, and I said, what? It's a copper silver story, a sedimentary hosted major, really large scale, high grade deposit, yet to be delineated, of course. But talk to us a little bit about this. Give us a sense of the scale of it. It's in Peru. Give us a sense of the scale and the grade, what you're seeing so far. It's early days. You've really not drilled it yet or anything yet, but just talk to us about the size and scale, grades, and so forth, and what maybe go into a little bit of the geology, the nature of this deposit.
Sure, Jay. So this is a new discovery, as you've hinted at there. Very early stage. We made literally the discovery over the last 18 months. We've been staking away quietly, but it was really only at the end of last year and then up until mid-March when we started to do the work that really has shown the initial thesis to be stacking up. So we're in Peru. We're over the Andes on the eastern side in the foreland basins where it hasn't seen a lot of exploration, a lot of oil exploration, but not a lot of metal exploration. And I've had a long history in Peru. I was there since the mid-90s, so had an inkling of what was going on out there, but really it hadn't opened up as an area that was really okay to explore until the last 10 or 15 years. It was a difficult place to get into. It was cocoa growing areas 20 years ago. I was working out there 20 years ago, so I knew very much about the area then. Now the scale you've asked about is vast. I mean, this is basinal scale. So if your listeners think of geology as a lot of layers of a cake, and that's how the rocks form over time, we're talking about a couple of layers, 2 or 3 layers within the rock mass that extends over the scale of this basin, which is over 120 kilometres long of mining concessions that we've had staked and granted over the last 6 months. So the scale is, if you could imagine where you're sitting now and go 120 kilometres away, and excuse me for talking metric for those in the US, but something like 60 or 70 miles away. We're talking such a large system, and we're starting to find copper in those specific layers over this large area. And it's very hard to find new projects as explorers, let alone new basinal scale projects. And just one other thing, just before I finish on this question, it's got some great analogues. It's the second most prolific form of copper in the world, and silver that is produced from, being the Central African Copper Belt and the Kufa-Shifa in Poland being the 2 great examples. And so the scale is great, the opportunity is great, and we're just basically got the tiger by the tail.
So how near surface then are you? Is the target here?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're exploring everything from surface at the moment. So we've found initially boulders up creeks. So you get one of these layers and it weathers and sheds into the creeks, and our geologists walk up the creeks and the boulders are little and they're green because they've got lots of copper and they're oxidized, and they get bigger and bigger until they become quite large, and then they stop. So then we know how to follow that up the hill to find outcrops. Now we're starting to find outcrops, which means where the rock comes to the surface. And we found these outcrops over tens and tens of kilometres. And really the challenge here is to find we know there's a lot of copper there. We know there's a lot of copper formed over 120 kilometers because we've already proven that. We know that we're finding these outcropping areas over 100, well, tens of kilometers. And now we're starting to find the continuity at sort of the kilometre to 500 metre scale and becoming predictive about finding that layer of copper. So it's from surface. We haven't drilled it. That's the next challenge, to find at that continuity level where we can start to prove it into the third dimensions. But we do know that we find it here. It goes under the ground, for a few kilometres, 4 or 5 kilometres, and we find it over here when it comes up again. So the inference is that it must join between there, and then it's long also in 120 kilometres in this way. So it's long and wide.
So I guess the reason that this has only been discovered more recently is because it wasn't easy to get in there to explore because of political factors, or what?
Yeah, so I touched on that before, that 20 years ago it was a difficult place to get into because you wouldn't have been welcomed as an explorer. The social aspects are key still, because the local people haven't seen a lot of exploration or mining. So it's starting from first principles, educating people who we are, what we're doing. We're getting access, and we're even getting calls when we're coming back into the field during this lockdown. So any relationship needs time to develop trust, and that's what we're doing. And so far so good on that front. But so 20 years ago that was the case, and then there was a little bit of exploration. Rio Tinto were there in the late 90s, early 2000s, and drilled 3 holes on the very southern part of the property into a lead zinc part of the system, which fringes the copper. But that's essentially it. I think the copper was known by many, but they didn't understand the context, and this seismic data and the geology from the oil explorers has put it into a context. And then we're getting out into new areas. Keith Barron up in Ecuador is finding the same sort of stuff across the border. Geology doesn't stop at borders, and we're starting to see that actually it exists not only in Peru but beyond Peru and up and down that whole chain from Colombia down through to Argentina. And these are mined in Bolivia, these systems as well. So it's all starting to come together, the thesis, but just happens where we're exploring, it hasn't seen much exploration at all.
With such a large area to explore, how do you know where to start? I mean, how will you determine drill targets, and when do you hope to have some drilling take place? Will it happen this year yet, or are we gonna have to wait until 2021?
Yeah, it's not going to happen this year, Jay, unfortunately, because we were going to start permitting a number of areas in and around March, and we figured that it was a sort of a 10-month exercise, so we're hoping to get in there later this year or early next year. Now that process is going to start when we go back into Peru. How do we know where to focus? Well, that's the challenge of such a large-scale project. But we do the big-scale stuff, and that's what we've been doing while we've been locked down. We've been looking at the satellite data. Some of the imagery now has really helped us over the last few years. New satellites have gone up, and that's really helped us crack the nut and match it with our mapping that we've done over this year also. So we can start looking at that sort of scale down to the detailed scale and boots and leather, and do large stream sediment surveys, which prioritise. But the key point is we don't really want to drill too early, even though the market absolutely wants drilling. But we've got to make sure we drill our best areas, and that was the reason for permitting a number of different areas, so we had that optionality also, and we'll do that.
All right. So the rest of the year, what should investors be on the lookout for? What are some of the share price drivers? Will there be much information, much news coming out this year yet that they can look forward to, or are we going to have to just be patient? Patience really pays off in this industry sometimes, but it's hard. We want our instant gratification, Michael.
Well, we hope to be back on the ground. Peru has opened up for exploration on June 2nd, but we're going over large areas here, and it's not the right time to go back today. So we're actually on a weekly basis just assessing where we're at. It's not responsible or appropriate to go back today, but I suspect we could be back over the next month or two, starting slowly with not 4 groups of geologists going back straight away. So I hope we'll start developing more information as in the next few months. And we've just, until just very recently, last week was our last results from the last program. So there's not too much of a gap.
I have to think that given the scale and the grades, there must be some big boys that are at least aware of what you're doing there. And I'm guessing at some point in time, depending on how your early exploration goes, you're going to have more attention, not only from the market, but from some of the big guys, because I can't imagine the scale you're talking about. It's for a junior, a market cap of 23 million Canadian. It's about 15 million US. So anyway, it's a very exciting story, Michael. Any parting comments? Anything you think you'd like to just leave with our viewers?
Oh, we got $1.5 million in the bank, so we're well funded to do what we're planning to do. So we still are keeping our dollars tight while we're not in the ground. So dollars are good. Lots of interest in the project, as you've suggested. Good grades over a large scale. The prize is big. The risk is high, but the prize is big.
Right. Well, thank you very much. It's an exciting story, no doubt about it. I'm glad I've got it in my newsletter, and we're already ahead of the game a little bit here already. So thank you for your work, and we look forward to talking to you again soon, Michael. Michael Hudson. Thank you so much.